Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the MitsuTimes podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Matthew Kirkendall and his very special Evo 10. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. All right, so the reason to me that your Evo 10 is very special is because you just ran a 999 not too long ago, and it joined an exclusive group of people who have gone nines in the Evo 10. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I bet a lot of hard work and probably a lot of money went into that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it was definitely a lot of money and a lot of frustration over the past couple of years on, trying to build the car and figure out what exactly I wanted to do with it. But, we prevailed and, here we are. It's a 9.99, still 9-second car nonetheless. So I'll take it.
Absolutely, yeah. Slap that 9-second club sticker on there.
Yeah, I need to do that. I need to get one, to be honest.
All right, Matt. So tell us about the setup on your Evo 10.
So currently right now it's all English racing built car. Everything that's on it was put on and installed by English Racing. So the motor itself, it's a 2.2 liter big bore. It's not a stroker. It's a big bore motor. So it has custom ER rods, pistons, polished OEM crank, all those fun goodies. It's bored out to, I believe it's 90 millimeters. So the walls are pretty thin. Dart and sleeves. As far as the fuel system, it's just, pretty, I like to think it's a pretty simple setup for, high horsepower. It's just a radium fuel system with dual Walboro 450s. Currently runs, it's a flex fuel car. So, my whole goal with the car was to, make it a fun drag car as well as, drive it on the street, to like your local Cars and Coffee or whatever. But, turbo wise, we just put on this year, at the beginning of this year, a next gen 6466 from Precision. That's about it. As far as everything else, the transmission is completely bone stock, no upgraded gears or anything like that. The drivetrain is also completely stock. So yeah.
So what's the feasibility of a 9-second Evo 10 that you can drive on the street?
Something I could just start up, warm up, and just drive. So it's kind of funny because I drive the car a lot. I don't daily it, but I do. Almost every weekend I'm out doing something with the car if the weather allows it. Here in the Pacific Northwest, it rains more than it's sunny. But just something that's I can get in and drive basically without having to worry about any sort of minor issues or anything or any hiccups and stuff happening.
I got you. Well, like I said at the beginning, there's not a lot of people really pushing the Evo 10 to the 9-second range. So what is it that made you choose the Evo 10 platform?
I've always been into Evos. I kind of got into cars just kind of based off video games. The Need for Speed series, the first one I played was, I think it was Need for Speed Underground 2. And, back then they had the Evo 8 in that one. And I can't remember. I think it was like one of the Need for Speeds where they kind of introduced the Evo 10. And, since I saw it in the video game, I was kind of hooked on that. Once I got a big boy job and, was able to afford it, I went out shopping for Evo 10, and it's from there we progressed into what it is today, essentially. That's
awesome. So really a lot of passion behind the build, not just something that you just bought to go fast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've always kind of gravitated more towards the Evo 10s. Beforehand I definitely looked at the 8s and 9s, but uh, something about the 10s just kind of, turned my head a little bit more as, that's probably, as far as Evos go, that's probably not usually what people say because more people in general tend to gravitate towards the 8s or 9s.
Makes sense. So you obviously didn't go straight, or maybe you did. Did you go straight to the setup that you have on it now, or did you try out a couple bolt-on turbos and kind of play your way around? What different setups have you had on the car?
Oh gosh, I've had from the time I bought it. I'd say I had about 3 different setups on the car. I knew I wanted an Evo 10, but I think it's a whole different conversation as far as what you want to do with the car. So when I first got the car, it was completely bone stock, and I would say the first iteration of it was literally just a full exhaust and tune. So it was about 350, 360 wheel. And honestly, I drove the absolute piss out of that car. There was, there was no reason for me to, I mean, I was just doing pulls every light, just no reason to be to handling the car like I was. But, yeah, that was kind of the first setup, more or less just kind of getting into, the car scene or, the more specifically into the Evos and stuff. And, driving like I drove it, eventually it kind of gave way, unfortunately. And the next iteration of it was a fully built head. So, S2 cams and cam springs and retainers, all that good stuff. And then upgraded stock frame turbo. I think, I don't remember. I want to say it was like a stock frame, like 60 millimeter turbo. And that was, we pushed it, put it on flex fuel, pushed it to about 500 horsepower. Unfortunately, that didn't last very long. Cylinder 1 gave way on that one. So it was actually kind of funny. So when I went into the shop, after that second iteration, when it just, it failed essentially. And initially for, the setup that I have now, I initially was going to keep it stock block and just upgrade the turbo again. I've known the guys at English Racing for basically since 2019, since I got the car. So I've had it for 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And so this, going back to it, that iteration of it, I just kind of, they call it, me kind of taking the cheap route. And so I had a long talk, or Miles, Jeff Bush, Alex, Lucas, all of those guys had TJ even, had a long conversation with me about, saving up, doing it the right way. Just kind of making it worth the time and the money, so, the third iteration, I did as such. I did what the professionals told me to do essentially. So, so initially last year I've had it. It's been running for about almost 2 years now. And, when I first got it back about 2 years ago, almost, I was on a Gen 2 6266. Everything else was essentially the same. It was a Gen 2 66, and I was on stock ECU actually. So I forgot to mention, now along with the next gen 6466, I'm also on a Motec M150.
Okay.
I'm still very much so learning about this car, let alone, cars in general, and that's of, kind of pushing them and, what makes them happy, what makes them tick. But I enjoyed my car on stock ECU. I had very minimal issues, but once you get a Motec, there's kind of no going back. I mean, it's quite an investment to put on the car, but as far as the safeties and the different parameters and all the different features that you can put on the car, I mean, it just drives night and day. And I enjoy it a lot with the Motec on it.
Good deal. So when you first picked the car up, Matt, what were your original goals with it?
Oh gosh, I actually, it's funny. I didn't actually have any goals per se. I just kind of bought the car to enjoy it, to finally check that off the bucket list of having a dream car of mine. And, the more I drove it, see people around that wanted to race against it. And, so then that's what kind of turned into the whole full exhaust in tune to make it a tiny bit faster. And then eventually, like when I was running about 500 wheel horsepower, I kind of wanted to do something with the car, aside from, just kind of street racing it and hooning it on the streets and stuff. I kind of wanted to, essentially motivate myself to, put it towards something, kind of have a goal for it. And initially I wanted to do autocross. I was looking up, doing all sorts of research, on social media, YouTube, and I came across this guy, and it was like an MAP, sponsored YouTube video of a guy. I can't remember his name on the top of my head, but he did essentially a 600 horsepower autocross build. And, it was like the coolest thing, to see that, because nobody really, like you said before, nobody really pushes these cars. Nobody really, it seems like does anything more than, 5, maybe 600 horsepower. And it's just, more or less street driven. Mm-hmm. So, seeing him do that kind of inspired me to try and get into autocross, and it's kind of funny. So, I kind of was doing a little bit of research, on that, and I ended up going to a local event. And as fun as it was driving my car around, the parking lot doing the autocross stuff, it didn't hit the same for me as it did probably other people. So during that, and shortly after, that's when it kind of cylinder one gave out. So during like the phase of building the current setup that's on the car, initially I actually wanted to continue to do autocross. Okay. But I think it was like about halfway through, English racing, like they have their hands in a lot of different stuff as far as racing goes. And, obviously their main thing is drag racing. And, as it goes, when you go to a shop like that, I kind of not only convinced myself, but was convinced by, the people there that, that'd be a fun thing to get the car to do. And so, as it goes, as you wait for a build, that was kind of the funny thing, as you're waiting for your build to be done, you kind of see stuff on the internet, other people's Evo 10s or other, cool parts and stuff, other cool things to do to the car. And, initially it was kind of funny, pretty kind of, I kind of call it ricer-ish a little bit, because I didn't really have intentions to take it to the drag strip, but I saw a couple Evo 10s that had 15-inch wheels, and I was like, oh man, I love the look, of the small wheel with the big meaty tire on it. I kind of want that aesthetic, and so, I spent the money to get the small brake kit, and, from there we got like a, hydro brake installed with it. Because, if you get the 15-inch wheels and tires, you got to have the hydro brake with it as it goes. But, basically as they were progressing with finishing up the build, I just kind of bought all this different stuff because I just kind of decided, like, I want to go and drag race the car. I kind of want to see what it can do as far as, the drag strip. And, so I was talking to them about it, asking them all the questions. I was asking some other people locally. One of the guys I talked to quite a bit, Eugene Purnell, he has his car. It was actually a pretty big inspiration to me as far as, that hybrid street build / drag build. And, I picked his brain about his setup and, all the things that he did. And then once it was complete, I was sold on it. I just wanted to go and take it down the strip essentially. And at the end of the day, told them, like, I just, my goal is just a 10-second pass. That's all I want to do with the car.
For sure. That's awesome. So you looking back on it, all those, kind of almost, well, I guess paths that you started, but then didn't go down. If you could start all over, you think you would do this build exactly the same?
Oh, 100%. I absolutely would do it. I mean, there's just different aspects as far as, drag racing and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think, one of the biggest things that makes it fun is the people around you.
For sure.
I honestly, I could say I've never had as much fun drag racing and, just talking shit and to all these, to everybody that's on the team, whether it's English Racing themselves or the other customers that they help out at the track. I mean, it's just, the camaraderie and the competitiveness between everybody is just, it's a blast.
Yeah.
And, and it's funny because, at the end of the day, we all go out, 30 people deep to, whatever restaurant is closest to the track and, and just have a good time. Like overall, it's probably one of the most fun sports and, hobbies that I could get into.
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by AO Customs. AO Customs is your go-to outlet for silicone gaskets for nearly all Mitsubishi platforms, including all of those hard-to-find, discontinued ones that you can't find at the parts stores anymore. They also sell those sweet silhouette cutouts to match your favorite Mitsubishi. AO Customs is also your home for vapor blasting, an alternative to sandblasting that will not leave behind any debris to get sucked into your engine or turbocharger. Check out all of their products and services at ao-customs.com.
So, what is it? Is it the people that keep you going with this car, or is it something that you have, like you just want to keep going to the track and keep doing better for yourself?
I would say both.
Okay.
Both. Excuse me. I think, I have my personal goals on what I want to do with the car, just because my motivation is, exactly what you said earlier. Nobody really pushes these cars. Nobody really, a lot of people will kind of do the high horsepower, drive them on the street, or high horsepower and just kind of have them sit. But nobody really seems to have pushed the car, at the drag strip, as far as, that isn't a shop, essentially.
For sure. Yeah.
So that was kind of my motivation behind it is, I want to, based off of, the setups that I have and what I can do, I just wanted to essentially push myself, to see what the car can do and, how deep on the list that I can get as far as, being, one of the faster Evo 10s. And the other aspect of it is definitely, the people. It's at the end of the day, it's a sport, and all the people around you, can kind of make or break your spirit when it comes to that, and I think that, it's definitely the more positive side where, every time I go to the track, whether it's the, the team itself, the other customers, or even the people that come up, to my car or the other cars and are, excited for us, asking us about, the different cars and stuff and, asking about our builds, it's just kind of, it's motivating in that sense of like, I for sure was at that point of, even before I got my car of like, wow, that's, those are such cool cars. Like that's something that I would, maybe hope to achieve one day.
For sure. Yeah. That's one of my favorite things, honestly.
Yeah. It's such a motivating factor as far as, seeing other people, progress in their builds and, kind of honing in and making your own build, yours essentially.
I feel like being there for one of your close friends to win a race or to reach a PB is equally, if not better, than getting it yourself.
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of my closest friends, he has a Evo 9. It was kind of funny. We first met, just literally both of us just happened to be driving around, our town essentially. And we pulled up to a light and it was like, oh, I like your car. I like your car. And, and from there, we, both of us, especially, we kind of have been motivating each other as far as, making our builds our own while pushing each other to do the same.
Yeah.
His name is Tyler and he has it's a black Evo 9. It honestly probably one of the cleanest Evo 9s I've ever seen. It's like a 900 horsepower Evo 9.
Damn.
And, my goal, so when we first met, he was way faster than I was. And so, that was another goal of mine, was to be faster than him, but that's still definitely a work in progress.
Understand. Well, at the beginning, I talked briefly about your, joining the 9-second club. I want to talk about what that 9-second pass felt like and what did it mean to you to see that 999.9 on the slip?
Oh, I was absolutely ecstatic. I mean, as soon as when we got that new turbo slapped on at the very first, right, like literally a day or two before the first race, the season that I went to, I was pumped. And we go, and it was essentially a race weekend, so we just kind of did passes and racing, both days. And it was kind of funny because I, slowly but surely dropping my time down a little bit from. Last year my personal best was like a 10:42, and then the first pass of this season was a 10:36. But the mile per hour was definitely there for a 9. It was just a matter of finding the right finding the right tire pressure, because there wasn't really much traction there, and just kind of trying to improve my short track.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that whole weekend, it was just right there, from 10:3 to, all the way down to 10:1. It was so close. And then, the next week, a few of us went to a different track, our local track down in Woodburn, Oregon. And I just, all that week, I was just like, it's going to happen. It has to happen this weekend. And, first pass of the day, it was like a 10:09. I mean, it was just right there. And so everything looked good. Lucas looked at the logs and everything looked good. And I asked him to turn it up, and he did. And then, I ran, and the whole time he was telling me, you got a flat foot shift. If you want the 9, you got a flat foot shift. And, I'm still learning the car. I've never flat foot shifted anything in my life, so I didn't really know, the concept of it, but he explained it to me, and the very next pass, it was funny. I absolutely did not flat foot shift 1 to 2. 2 to 3 was like a smidge better, but 3 to 4 was like a perfect flat foot shift, and everything else, even aside from shifting, just felt great. Like it just felt perfect. And sure enough, I went around and got my slip and saw the 9, and I was beyond ecstatic. Like it was just unreal.
Felt like all that hard work and money was worth it then.
No, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I even now, I say, technically, I could say it's a 9-second car, but as it goes, once you achieve that goal, you kind of want to go a little bit deeper and push the car a little bit more.
Oh,
so
sure. But I have so many people on here say that just never ends. You get 9.5, then you're going to want to make it 8, make it a 8.5. It's one of those things.
I mean, if I had $1 for every time, I was told by anybody, at the shop or, close friends that have built cars and stuff that, you set these goals and it never ends, I'd probably have enough money to make another build.
At least get you a daily, huh?
Yeah, oh, easily. Yeah, absolutely.
That's too funny. So, I mean, 2025 starting off really, really well.
Yeah.
Are there any goals that you want to hit by the end of the season?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, hit the main goal that I wanted is, a 9.5. I kind of, obviously hitting that, and I'm kind of like, well, I want more. So, my goal now is to hopefully get a 9.5.
Okay. You think that's completely doable in the setup you got right now?
I would say so. Absolutely. We're trying to kind of find that sweet spot of, which obviously is kind of an oxymoron, but, trying to find the sweet spot of pushing the car, but also keeping it together.
For sure.
With it being on a stock drivetrain and stock transmission, that's, and as many times as I've, raced the car at the track, like there's, it's a ticking time bomb at the power that it's at. But, as long as it's holding up, I'm going to keep trying to push the car to do that.
Living on the edge.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have a long-term goal in mind? Is there a number or a event that you want to win or anything like that?
No, it's funny. I've never really thought about, winning per se, like going to an event and, like, oh, like I want to win this class or whatever it is.
For sure.
Like it's always more or less been just like a time thing. Like I just want to, get a certain time in the car. If I feel like, based off whatever power level I'm at or, what's done to the car, like, okay, like I feel like this could be achievable and, just kind of go from there essentially.
Okay. No, I think that's probably what a lot of people, that's probably the same kind of mindset that a lot of people have.
Yeah, just kind of, because at the end of the day, you're kind of, I mean, you're racing other people, but you're also kind of racing yourself in that sense, which is, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the most appealing things about racing for me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Matt, are there any events that we can come out and see your Evo 10 in action at in 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple IFO events that are going to be around the Pacific Northwest. There's one at Woodburn Drag Strip in Oregon that's happening in 3 weeks that I'm going to attend to and hopefully keep chipping away at that 9-second, hopefully getting to the mid to low nines. There's also another one at the same drag strip later on in the fall. I think it's in September, October that I'm going to try to go to as well. And then probably a couple events in Washington. I know they have Race Wars at, I think, either Bremerton or Renegade Raceway that I also want to attend to as well this year. So definitely trying to get my fix in, at the local tracks here in Oregon and Washington.
For sure. I feel like, like you said earlier, it's usually raining there, so you got to plan for as many events as you can get into.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. The rain, it rains more than it's dry out here for sure.
Well, Matt, I would imagine, at least in my head, there's thousands of Evo 10 owners out there right now. Like, man, I really wish I could get my car to run a 9. I just don't know what to do. Don't know who to talk to. What would be your advice to that person that's looking to run that 9 second?
Yeah, I would actually give them the same advice that I was given when I built my car to this. It is buy once, cry once. I learned the hard way, that it's better to just buy, the quality parts rather than spend, double, maybe even triple your money, buying stuff cheap or used in hopes that, you can do that. I think there's something to be said about a budget build, but I think after a certain, when you're trying to achieve, higher horsepower, certain numbers at the track, I think it's, more plausible to, buy those, save the money, buy the quality parts, spend money on, the labor as far as, people knowing what they're doing when it comes to the installs, the wiring, tuning, all of that stuff. It's a lot better to do that than, spend double, triple, even some cases probably quadruple on, a guy that says that they can do it for half the price or, whatever it may be. It's just better just to kind of save up, and, essentially save up the money, that you have and spend money on the quality parts that are even a little bit more expensive. Because in the long run, it's going to do you a lot better rather than having to fix something that's either used or, cheaper quality, essentially.
Yeah. Just like, I mean, we hear this all the time on the podcast of people giving this exact same advice. And it seems like it's always better to just bite the bullet and like you said, save up and then go ahead and buy it the right part the first time.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I kind of figured these cars are very, whether it's the 10s, the 8s, or the 9s, like these cars can be very finicky. And, when you're pushing them, it's better to push something that has, just because, the car has these parts on it doesn't mean that they'll necessarily last, whether they're cheap.
Yeah.
So kind of being able to push your car without having to worry about, that cheap, $500 turbo, that might last maybe a pull at best, rather than buying the, name brand, higher quality, proven parts.
Right. Well, Matt, something that we're trying new this season on these podcasts, is there anybody that you want to call out in 2025?
Oh man, it's kind of funny. I'm not really the type of person to,
That's okay.
call
you don't have
people
to
out.
give us an answer.
Well, I'll give you a couple names. So, I mean, my goal, overall is to beat, my buddy Eugene Purnell. He's the guy, I talked about earlier that has that really, really clean, Evo 10 that he's definitely pushed, a few years ago to run that 9. I believe he's at a 9.7. So, my goal is to beat that time. I know he has something, crazy coming up with his car in the next couple of years. But, while I have the opportunity, I kind of want to beat that time. Next, I want to beat my buddy Tyler. He ran a 9.8 in his Evo 9. And, for him and I, kind of pushing each other, giving each other crap about, who's faster, who's not, all this kind of stuff. But, it's all fun and games. But, my goal also is he ran a 9.8 at the track, and my goal is to beat that time as well.
Gotcha. That's pretty exciting. Those are some, even though it seems to the average person maybe that a 9.9 and a 9.7 aren't that far apart, that's an uphill battle.
Oh, it definitely is. It's going to be worth it.
Well, Matt, where can people find and follow you on social media and see more about your Evo 10 and the build?
Yeah, so I just have an Instagram for it. It's just my initials, MAK _219.
Okay, and it'll be linked down below. You can go and check it out. And then finally, Matt, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or shout out to anybody who's helped them get where they are, get their car where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to give a thanks to English Racing, everybody there. All the customers that I race with, that's a part of them as well. I feel like, I would say, that I wouldn't have been here without them as well, but also they're also the bad influence that's kind of pushed me to, put more money into this car and push it to where it's at right now. But, it's all in fun.
Yeah,
it's all in
exactly.
fun. So, I just want to thank them. Extreme Turbo Systems, their customer service is amazing, when it came to buying like the turbo kit and other things from them, and Precision Turbo for also being, helpful in terms of, upgrading my Gen 2 to a next gen as well. So I can't thank those guys enough as well.
Awesome, man. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on here and telling your story and telling, a little bit about the build. I can't wait to see some more updates from you, man. Keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the time.
Of course. I'll see you at the track.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.